So today we're going to talk about hiring and the tools that we have available in CADLearning to help with hiring, specifically pre-hire assessments. So pre-hire assessments are a tool that we often talk about during the sales process, and then I find that once we go through the onboarding and people start working, they sometimes forget about them. So we're going to walk through how they work, what they do, how to set them up and use them. And then because, again, it is a relatively small group today, I'll just open us up for questions. We can have a discussion about anything you want to see in regards to that. So at the start here, I just want to say that I'm logged into a dummy demonstration organization. It's all dummy information that I've made up so that we can sort of poke a stick at it here. Don't laugh too hard at my silly names and examples. And I'm going to begin right up here at the top by clicking on the organization menu. So in order to manage a pre-hire assessment, you do have to have administrative permissions to get to the assessments area. This is the content creator role that somebody needs to be assigned in order to access this. And as long as you have the content creator role, you will see both of these boxes, the light gray boxes here. And we're going to take a look at the assessments that are created for this organization. And there's quite a few listed in here, as a typical organization would have over time, building numerous assessments for numerous things. So I'm going to go ahead and filter this list right here by type, because we do have multiple types of assessments available. I'm going to come right here to pre-hire. And this is a listing of all the pre-hire exams that this particular organization has created. Now, in this list, there's all different types containing questions from different programs, all different examples that have been set up over time. Okay. I'm going to start by looking at applicant screening. I think this is probably the most recent one that's been created. Applicant screening is a generic assessment that was created for applicants coming in so that you can send out invitations in advance, get an idea of the skill set before you sit down and talk with them, okay? Now, of course, you can work this out in whatever business process works for you, but that's just the example that we had set here. And when we're working with a pre-hire assessment, the only thing that's a little bit different is this additional tab right here, pre-hire. All of the other assessments contain the exact same tabs and are created and saved the exact same way. This is the only distinction right here. So on the details screen was a place for the name, the description, and if we wanted to link this to a particular role. Okay, so if we've created learning paths for each of our roles that we might be filling, we can do that. Under courses, we indicate which courses this is going to contain questions for, and this can be multiple. If you're building an assessment for somebody who's going to have multiple products in their arsenal, you can add questions from each of those products. Just add whichever ones you want in here. So why don't we add one just to see? We'll put BIM 360 in here. They often go hand in hand. So I'm going to click on add to add it to the list, and then I'm going to save my changes. And then I'll show you where that makes a difference when we get down to the questions. Medallions and badges, these are relatively new choices where you can actually link to a particular goal or a particular medallion and badge. That ties together with the role option at the top. And these are designed so that if you wanted to dynamically build based off an existing badge or medallion, you can. Now I'm going to skip over pre-hire for just a moment, and I'm going to come right down here to questions. This is the heart of the assessment. This is where we're going to build out the questions we're asking these applicants, but we want them to respond to. So when you're building an assessment, if you're new to this process entirely, there are 4 tabs across the top here to help you build the assessment. And the first one is Add by Assessment. This can be used if there's another assessment you've already created that you want to copy. You essentially want the same questions, maybe 1 or 2 changes. You can choose that existing assessment from the list here and grab the questions that you want. Okay. Don't happen to have any questions on that one. There we go. So any question that I want to incorporate into this assessment, I can click Add. If I would like to make a copy of the question so that it creates a second version of this that I can adjust, I can put in new text for the question, new text for the answers, change the scoring, whatever the case may be, I can copy. So you simply click Add to add a new one to the list, or Copy if you would like to make changes. Now, Add by Course is going to let you choose which course you want to add from. So I just added BIM 360. The questions that we had in here previously were all Revit. So let's choose BIM 360 this time. And it presents for me all of the topics in that library, and I can expand them to see all of the questions in the question bank. Way more than you probably ever need. There's thousands of questions in here. We give you access to all of them. So from here, again, I'm going to click on Add for anything I want to grab, click on Copy for anything I want to change slightly. Now, one of the most common questions I get at this point is, how do I know if I want to change it? Can I view it first? You absolutely can, but if I follow the link right now, it's going to take me away from the screen. So I need to be sure I save my changes before I do that. And a quick tip or shortcut is, if you'd like to view it without having to change your screen, just right mouse click here and ask to open it in a new tab. So then I don't lose my progress here, but I can view on this second tab the detail of the question. So from here, I can see the question text. I can see each of the answers that are provided, which one is correct, and even what the suggested lessons are going to be if somebody answers it incorrectly. Now, I'm just viewing right now. I can't make any changes here. If I do want to change it, that's when I would take a copy and I would select it in this column to make my changes and then click Save. So this requires reading through the list of questions and hand-picking the ones you want. Probably the best choice when we're talking about a pre-hire assessment, because you're going to be very focused on particular things you're looking for. However, if you don't want to go through and choose question by question, there is a generate option by course. And in this example, if I choose one of the courses, I can specify how many questions I'd like. I can even choose individual topics. If I want to skip over the basic topics and focus on just more particular details down here, or I can leave that unchecked and it'll be everything. Then you're going to click on Generate Questions, and it does warn you your existing questions would be removed. So it's going to replace this with 20 randomly selected questions from the BIM 360 course. So I said yes. It redid the screen for me, and if I want them, I'm going to click Save. If I've changed my mind, I can always back out of the screen and return to questions. I may have lied. It saved automatically. I'm pretty sure these are the new questions. I may have fibbed. So let's pay attention to that warning. It will replace all of the questions there. The last option here is Generate by Role, and this is the one that's linked back to those badges and medallions. So on the detail screen, where I could say this particular assessment points to one of our roles, it can look at all the goals that participating role has, and then you can choose existing medallions and badges that you want to generate the questions from. Okay. It's far more common to come through and look at it by course, because then you get a chance to review them all in a list versus having to just pick a number and go. So this is building the assessment. This is handpicking each of those questions that you want answered for the user. If you choose, when you're building questions, to include skills assessment questions, those questions are just a little bit different. Let's come back here and look at the overall knowledge assessment for, here we go, skills assessment for Revit. These questions are going to ask the user to open up a file and perform a series of tasks to arrive at the correct answer. So these are hands-on questions, not recall-based. What this means is you can certainly use them, but you need to be sure that A, the applicant has access to the software. Not everybody will own that personally. Or B, that they have access to these files if they did have the software. So I have found that a lot of people will bring the applicants into their office to do this assessment, and you can download the files that they need right onto the machine you're going to have them use, if that's the case. If they're not coming in or you don't know what machine they're going to be using, you can email directly to them a link with those files that they'll need. It does not include them automatically with the assessment link. The assessment link is very limited for your pre-hires. They're really just going to get a single invitation. It opens up just the assessment and nothing else, because we don't want them to have access to the library. So if you choose to do the hands-on questions, you will need to provide those files in another manner. Of course, this can tell you a whole lot more about how well somebody understands it, so it's certainly worth the extra step. Now, once we've built our assessment to be exactly what we want it to be, we've saved our questions and we're ready to send it out. There's a couple of ways you can do this. The most common is right here on the Pre-Hire tab. So within the assessment, there's a tab for pre-hires. Again, the only thing that looks different for that type of assessment, with a list of people who have been invited, the invitees. And you'll be able to tell from here if somebody has started that assessment, if they've started it but not finished it, and if they finished it, you'll be able to view the results here. Again, don't laugh too hard. I did get 2 correct, but it took me only 22 seconds. So that sort of tells you a lot. If you see here that somebody answered it too quickly, you might be concerned. If they took too long, you might be concerned. So that information is helpful. So each of the applicants are listed here, and you'll have a nice history going forward. Alternatively, I've had a number of people who have looked for a different way to manage this other than coming back to the assessment. The projects tool is an excellent way to manage your pre-hire assessments. So the projects tool allows you to keep track of hiring and filling positions within a project. And in the examples that I've set up here, we have a couple of actual projects that people are working on, and then one that's called pre-hire screenings. So I'm going to select that pre-hire screenings. And right here, you can see that we have a start date, we have a stop date, we have a name and a description. Of course, I can update any of these details at any time. The Set tab indicates which products might be needed for any of the jobs that I'm filling. And you can add as many as you want. And then the third tab here is for roles. So which roles would we be filling? What would we be hiring for? The role templates that it's using are connected to your learning paths. So when you build roles for your learning paths, you're also building them for this. And you can modify them right here in this place. So I have roles associated with this project right now for drafter, mechanical specialist. That's the 2 job openings I have right now. That's what I'm looking for. And for each one of these job openings, I can select the role, and I can see here when it started. Okay, you can leave this open as long as you wanted. You can have an ongoing project for this. And then I can see which pre-hire assessments being used, notes for any notes you want to capture, and then right down here, the candidate list. So everybody who's completed it, you're going to find a score listed here. Okay, you're going to see their status over here. Now, I did modify this already, and I probably shouldn't have, but I went through and I accepted one of the applicants, which automatically rejected all of the others, indicating I filled the job. You can invite existing users to do the assessment if you wanted to. You can find internal candidates. This tool is going to go out and search for scores of all of the users that are in your system already, so internal candidates, and tell you who the best matches are if you're trying to find somebody to fit this particular role. You can invite a new candidate from here. It is the same thing as inviting somebody from the pre-hire assessment. So there are 2 different places you can really manage it. And if it's something that you're filling that's going to have a number of roles and it's for a dedicated project, this is a great way to do it because you'll have a history of everybody who applied for that job and which one you accepted and which one you rejected. The assessment itself, if I return to that assessment, is going to have a long running history every time I used it, every job I filled with it. So that's the distinction there. Okay. Now let's go ahead and invite somebody so that you can see what that looks like. I'm going to do add invitation. And today we're going to invite Franklin Oster. And yes, I do make these ridiculous names up on the fly. And it's going to be Frank O at mailinator.com. And save. This is all it takes to invite somebody is a first name, a last name, and an email address. And they get added to the list with a status here. Now I'm going to open a second window. I'm going to do an incognito window and bring it right here so you can see it. And I'm going to navigate to mailinator.com. I don't know if any of you have ever used this tool before. It's a great way to test emails. And we named him Frank O. So this is open to everybody in the world to use, of course, so I'm not the only person using this. But here's the invitation right at the top, CADLearning. When I select the invitation, this is exactly what your applicants are going to see. They're going to have an invitation that says they've been invited to take a pre-hire on behalf of, I'm logged into 4D, but it would have your URL listed here for your organization. Please follow this link to begin your assessment. So the user or the applicant is going to click on this link right here, and it's going to bring them to a screen asking them to request access to do the assessment. And they can add a phone number here if they want. That's totally optional. And then submit. So this person has completed their application, which means they're in here ready to take their assessment. Notice how they don't have any menus. Nothing is visible here. They can agree to their cookies, but that's it. Just the applicant screening. So they start the assessment and they come through and they answer the questions very carefully after reading each of the questions and thinking about it, which I am, of course, not doing. Oh, goodness, how many did I put in this? I don't want to sit here forever. I thought maybe I could just take it real quick. I'll point out, of course, that whenever there is one of those images in a question, they can click it to make it bigger. Obviously, everybody has a different screen size, so they can expand that. Well, it's a little longer than I expected. Now, if the applicant is partway through and oh, look, I'm on the last question, so we're going to finish it. But if the applicant is partway through and they think the same thing, I can't complete this right now, I don't have enough time, they can save and exit. And then they can use that same link to come back. And what that's going to look like is it's just going to say in progress. That's how it's going to appear. If they do get to the end and they complete, notice how they don't get a score. It just tells them to go ahead and close their browser. So we're going to close that out. They don't get to see the score. Only you get to see the score. So from here, I've just refreshed the screen, and you can see that Franklin finished, and we can view his results right here. 4 questions correct, and it took 52 seconds. Now, that applicant is going to be listed. If I come to the organization menu and to users, it did create a temporary account for them when they followed that link, but that applicant has no subscription and they are listed only as a pre-hire user. They do not have access to the system. If you are not going to hire this person, you want to make sure that you make them inactive, unconfirm their email, and save. So if you know you're not going to be bringing them in, go ahead and deselect. And remember, when you're viewing your user list, you can hide all your inactive users right here. So by default, I'm seeing only active users. Now, once somebody's come on board, the final piece of this, of course, what happens when I hire this user? 95% of the time, you're going to be giving them a brand new email address with your company email domain. So it's not like converting the existing user. So how do they retain that history? When you are adding a user here, and I have probably warned each of you about this, I often say don't use invite user because it sends a pending invitation. If I use invite user, contrary to my previous advice, but I uncheck send email, this is going to alleviate that invitation from going out. This tool will allow you to put in the user's first name and last name. Let's do it again. Let's do Frank Oster. I can put in their new title, whatever their job title is, and their new corporate email address. So maybe this is going to be osterf@cadlearning.com. Right here, there is a field for personal email. This is something that you can use to link to the person's personal account. This will only work if they had the personal account here in the system to begin with. You don't want to do this for everybody. This only works for those people that you've done the pre-hire for. So from here, I should be able to do franko@mailinator.com. I'm not 100% it's going to accept it because that is a dummy domain, but we're going to try. Okay, so once you've done this, once you've filled in both those addresses, and make sure you deselect send email because you don't want that invitation because it will expire before they get to it most likely. Yeah, I was afraid of that. I cannot bring them in with my dummy email. So in that case, what I would want to do is create a brand new account for the user and let them know that they're starting fresh. I do think if you have a proper email address, not Mailinator, which is a blocked email because it's a dummy email, and I do work in the real environment, it would link the two together for you, no problem. Okay. So we would want to go ahead and make him inactive at this point if we weren't merging them together. If you did this from the project, if you invited your user from the project, I'm going to return to pre-hire screenings. I'm going to take a look at the roles that we were filling. I'm going to look at drafter. Oh, I already did drafter. Let's see if we had anybody under mechanical. I didn't. Invite new candidate. We're just going to send that out real quick. William Jenkins w@noemail.com. All right, so it has sent William an invitation to this pre-hire 23, a little bit of a different assessment, different role I'm filling. I can add notes here. If you hire this person, then you can come on down here and say accepted. That way you have a record of who you ended up hiring when you come back to look at this later, which is exactly what I did with that other role with drafter. I came through and said this user was accepted. It automatically set the others to rejected. So I just want to recap with the projects piece is 100% optional, but it is a great tool if you want to create a single project to track all of your hiring, and you'll add a new role each time you're filling a position so that you can see everybody who you sent an application to and who you ended up hiring. You do not have to do that. You can manage all of the applicants directly from the pre-hire assessment on the pre-hire tab. You can send the invitations from here. You can view the information from here. Now, the final piece that people are usually looking for when we're talking about these applicants is the detailed reporting. And I want to let you know that when we come to the reports area, in the achievements column, the only place you're going to find that detail is when you download the assessment data. The assessment report card, unfortunately, considers only library assessments. That's where it's looking for any assessment that was taken. So it's not seeing the pre-hires. It won't be one of the choices in the drop-down list here. Okay. But you will be able to do download, and it will include all of the questions that this person answered and what they chose for their answer so that you can see that history.